All right, we're back. So today we're going live with Helen Vonderheide. This is the third time I have had my dear friend, collaborator, teacher, Helen, on Instagram with me. And today, well, first let me introduce Helen. So Helen is a community educator whose teachings invite the embodiment and expression of interconnectedness, relationality, and reciprocity through the lens of the Akashic Records, Decoloniality, and Empirical Evidence. Through her curriculum, Personal Pathways, students are supported in creating a personal pathway to access the Akashic Records and the source of your consciousness. And each person has a unique relationship with the energy of Akasha, their guiding forces, and how they use their innate gifts to receive the information, so there isn't one prescriptive method. Everyone is entitled to discover how to access expansive consciousness through their own pathway. And so Helen is going to be coming on today to actually share about their own heart journey and their own journey with their own pathway. And this is part of a broader new narratives series that humhum is creating, which looks to tell the story of the heart's journey through the lens of one's inner experience rather than through the lens of the outer circumstance. Like, this happened to me and all this kind of situational stuff. Rather, what are the lessons we're learning? What is the process that we're experiencing? So let me invite Helen on now. All right. Come on, Instagram. You can do it. There we go.
Yay!
Hello, Helen.
Oh, hello, Alexandra.
So I just gave a brief bio. I, offered the bio that you had shared, which I love. It's so poetic and really speaks to the incredible work that you do. And you and I kind of started a conversation maybe, was it 2 years ago? No, a year and a half ago or so in May, around the pathways work, the pathways of the heart work that you were developing. And you were sharing with me just how kind of you were like taking your own medicine in a way. And that as you were creating this body of work, which I've seen has happened for you so many times, where like you'll create a body of work and at the same time it'll be working on you and like transform your entire reality and life, which to me, I feel just such deep reverence for your willingness and courage to kind of be in a co-creative process this way with how you work and how you share. And so I just feel really so excited to have you on to share more about your personal story and journey with your own pathway. And so I guess before we jump in to some questions, is there anything like top of heart that you want to name or share with those of us that are listening or with me?
Yeah. So I love this. Thank you so much for opening up the space so we could have a conversation about this. And I think that it's really appropriate given the time and just how we're all evolving and expanding. And I'm so excited about this conversation. Like, I'm so happy to be here and to share more. But before we jump in, this was something that I was reflecting on earlier. And it's like two parts. The first part is that I have been in a year and a half immersion with decolonial studies, and that's helping me develop a decolonial lens, a decolonial ontological lens. And so what that means is it is the lens that I see my life through that essentially is shaping the reality that I experience. And so, a decolonial lens is kind of looking at where did someone or something else exert their influence into the way that I'm experiencing my reality, and how can I slip out from under that influence and really reconnect with what is mine and what is inherent to my being. And so that said, so my decolonial teacher, I'll give her a little shout out. Her name's Leah Garza, but she did bring in a guest teacher, and his name is Bio Akomolafe, and he's such an incredible decolonial scholar, speaker, human being. And Bio shared something with me that was really profound. He said, you know, when an authoritative blueprint is imposed on nature, and you can consider us as nature, as organisms, imbalance an imbalance starts to occur, because the nature of existence of organisms is to experience this like free flowing, effortless way of being. And so I loved that. And I started to think about that today, especially around new narratives. And I was thinking about an authoritative blueprint, and where I kind of find myself presently is it's like in the observation of that authoritative blueprint, and then simultaneously where I feel that imposing itself on me, starting to extract myself from being in relationship with it. And this absolutely speaks to like any relationship that we have, whether those are intimate, romantic, platonical, any kind of relationship. It starts, you start to see that being reflected in your environment, and then you just take it into consideration, like, oh, wait a minute, is that the blueprint that feels inherent of who I am, like at a deeper level, at the level of being an organism. So I just wanted to share that, because I think that will really set the tone for what I'm going to share in the conversation that we have today.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's really powerful. It makes me think of like inherent versus inherited, like what is tops down versus bottoms up, or like the intelligence of our system. How do we get rid of all the like chipping away to get rid of the stuff that's not ours, to actually find our true essence? And even that, it's like, what does it even actually mean? And like that's kind of the discovery of like, yeah, what you're talking about. So grateful for that lens. Yeah. And I know you and I have talked so many times about language and how it feels really limiting. And so it's like finding and discovering the threads of that internal truth and essence. And sometimes language falls short. And so we could talk about that, because I know you have your own like language for a lot of things, and I'm really excited to talk about that. But maybe start off by just some of those inherited or imposed ideas about relationships. So like, how has your heart's relational journey looked different than the ideas you've inherited about how it should look? And maybe with that, if you want to go into just like, how have you been in relationship to that gap or that difference? Because I feel like that part is the challenge.
Yeah. So I've been reflecting on this quite a bit, specifically through the genetic expression of who I am and who I've become, through my ancestors. And one of the biggest things that I've recognized is how easy it is for me to give my power away to someone else or something else. And this is definitely a part of a colonial ontology. A colonial ontology is that there's always like something or someone that is superior. Be that, like a governmental organization or some sort of a hierarchical structure, that entity for some reason knows me better than I know myself. So immediately that sort of blueprinting puts another entity in between or above my own internal knowing of me and who I am at, you know, the true nature of me, who I am at like the deepest levels. So immediately there's this separation and this almost like this pulled apartness from self-trust, you know, that I need to place my trust or my knowing in whatever else is superior to me, whatever that is. So I've seen that a lot in the history of my family, my ancestors. And then because of that, society's needs have been superior to our own internal needs. So growing up for me, what I saw, which is so wild, and probably so many can relate to this. I grew up in the Midwest. I was born and raised in Chicago. And the ontology that was presented to us without verbal presentation was that you get married, you have kids, and that's life, right? It's like, you know, from the moment you exit the womb, we're grooming you through the education system to become capital. And we're preparing you to enter into this workforce. And then when you get married or whatever that looks like and you have kids, then you're preparing them to essentially to be capital. And so when I saw that narrative growing up, something inside of me said, no, that is not what's going to shape my life. So I pursued my career first. And while all of my friends from high school started to get married and started to have families, I just had a crystallized knowing that path, whatever that path, traditional path is not for me. So I was able to pursue these dreams and these passions that were alive inside of me and really get to know who I was. And I think that that's really what was required on my behalf, was like getting to know who I am at like almost like a whole person level. And so I pursued that, and things for me started to look and be really unconventional. And now what's really interesting is I'm at this intersection where I am in partnership with someone, and life partnership with someone, and we actually are going to bring a family in. And so then I'm being confronted with these narratives that I again was raised with, that I'm trying to sort of like extract and slip myself away from. And then I'm like, how do I bring beings into this existence without perpetuating these same patterns, you know, where like someone else or something else is superior to my own inherent knowing. And I'm reading a book right now. It's called Raising Free People. And it's pretty incredible. It's essentially, I'm at a point in the book where the author is saying, Akila Richards is saying that like we are born free, and that our self-expression is one of the most important through lines in who we're becoming. And so to be in relationship with someone who is not acting as a hierarchical presence that overrides your own inherent knowing is what's helping to shape our lives and shape who we are. And yeah, it's so beautiful. And so that's kind of where I'm at. It's really interesting. I really want to transform the ancestral patterns moving forward. And I understand the past, and I have so much peace with like, how my ancestors had to survive and like what got them to where they are and where we are as a family. And now I'm like so dedicated to just a radical transformation in how we can experience how we can become these new ancestors, and how that starts to look and what that starts to become. And it's like I'm in a liminal space. I'm at a blank slate, and it's a lot of it is all about just like co-creating in the moment.
Yeah, just I have so much respect for the creativity and the devotion and everything you're talking about, and wanting to do it from this lens of not having an imposed blueprint on your process, which I think the thing that, one, this isn't talked about very often, and the other part that's not talked about is like we know it's hard, but like the nuance and the flavor of the grief that can come up in finding our way in that liminal space. Like, would you be open to just sharing any bit of some of what is like deconstructing and rearranging in your inner system in order to kind of make space for what's being reconstructed, that you are actively co-creating and reconstructing?
Yeah. So my partner and I are talking about, so this is really interesting. Just knowing that he and I are wanting to bring a family in. A lot of my kind of reconstruction that I'm being confronted with is, how are our children going to be educated? Like, what is that going to look like? And just kind of looking at the systems that have been put in place, and are those systems putting the person first, or are those systems just putting those persons in line with their agendas? And so he and I are just talking a lot about that, and it's such an interesting place to be confronted with, because I went to a public elementary school, and then I went to a Catholic high school for 2 years, and then a public high school for 2 years. And I think, oh, well, I went through the public school system, a Catholic school system, and I feel like I turned out pretty great, so like, what's the harm? But the harm for me has not really been seen or recognized as the whole person that I am. So I am a very emotionally sensitive person, and emotional sensitivity and emotional intelligence is not something that is incorporated into a school system. You may be able to find that in some places. I'm just thinking about Rudolf Steiner's schools, Waldorf schools and Montessori schools, right? And like, those absolutely incorporate some of those principles, but not everybody has the funds and resources to put their child or children through that sort of educational program. I certainly do not. Like, it's not to say that that won't be there, but then I start to think about, and this is where my decolonial lens comes in. I start to think about, well, what else has not been done before? What else can we explore that wasn't previously put in place? And then that just starts to open up like so many, what it starts to open up inside of me is fear, and a sense of ungroundedness, because I'm starting to embark in territory that has not been laid out for me before. And so when you start to look beyond the systems that are available, like it just can become overwhelming. It can become like destabilizing. But at the same time, you know, at the same time, there is there is a stability in me being able to know those inherent truths inside of me, and then also give those a voice and expression. Like I said to my partner the other day, like I just said, I am like 100% on board with creating a family with you, and I am also so scared. And he said, thank you for sharing that. I am too. And so just being able to say, like, I am so scared with like whatever this new process is going to look like for us, feels like it started to create a little bit of stability, because there is this level of me being able to express, while another on a receiving end can kind of hold.
It makes me think of one of my teachers, Nikki Kashdan, talks about this idea of co-holding, and you're pretty much spelling it out. It's like we name the truth that's here for each of us, and then we're not as alone in it, because we can be in the not knowing together. We can be in the messiness together of like maybe not getting it right, maybe not, having to figure it out. And it makes a lot of space for actually co-creativity, but also just that sense of you don't have to hold this by yourself, that you don't know how to do it. That like, and I wonder if I'm kind of sensing on like a broader scale that we're being called to do this in communities and pods and like bigger groups of people, where you and your partner can like bring this to your other humans who are also thinking about these questions. And I'm curious if that's come up at all for you. Like, do you feel supported, and like how are you and your partner supporting yourself through this kind of unknown territory that you're wading in now and creating ultimately at the edge of your own inquiry?
Yeah. And oh my gosh, Alexandra, that is the key, is being able to have some sense of connection with others, or another, just like around some of these deeper transformations that are taking place. I, as a part of my decolonial program, we actually have lots of opportunities to be in community. So we have the large group. We also have some smaller pod groups. And then also as a result of that, I've made some individual connections with some people. And so I've had the opportunity to be in dialogue with those others around these like really big concepts that I'm trying to hold and process and understand and grieve, and like also have the space to be open for like more to come in. But I will say that just around what my partner and I are holding, we don't yet have a community around that. So I would say that what I am finding is ways to sort of be in connection with others that that are not quite yet local yet. So these are people that I have connections with who live in the United States, and so West Coast, Central. So right now it feels like I'm having this support, but have not yet identified what that is locally. That said, I am open and expressive with my family. My family lives, where my partner and I live, and then it's interesting. I even try to be careful about these like new radical ways of like thinking and being, because my partner and I are surrounded by people who still are operating with this blueprinting, with this kind of this colonial authoritative blueprinting. And so I don't want to, I'm just careful about what I express, how I express. And then what's so beautiful is that as I get to open up, like I am connecting more and more with a greater support system. But I think for me, it's been really important to first kind of have that core support network and then expand from there.
Totally. And I think what you're talking about in terms of like who you're letting into this kind of very nascent truth and consciousness that's like forming and evolving, that discernment is so important, because the other blueprint's so strong already that it's easy to like fall back into a certain way of thinking that is familiar, or just feels safer as a result of it being familiar. And it's just, the grooves are so deep. And so on one hand, the connection around that, at least I'm now talking from my own experience, when I've like been exploring different ways of being in the world and different ways of holding things, that those grooves feel so deep that who I'm with is so important to help me take that kind of quantum leap into the new way of being, because it's so easy to slip into the fear or that like kind of stuck energy of what is falling away within your own system. And so I just see you in this process of like really exercising discernment, and like you're in the kind of shoot of the transition, and also cherishing these relationships of family and loved ones, etc., and also seeing the limitations of that's not going to help you get to the like full expression of this vision that you're holding for your family and your life. So I'm holding this question for myself around like, how do we hold the dissonance or that tension between relationships and connection and love, and also the vision that we hold for our own lives, and anything you can share on how you're navigating that.
Yeah. I also wanted to add one thing, just in regards to the community, this space and the community that you have cultivated with humhum. So much of the work that you are doing it just feels so timely, and also so beautifully intimate to bring people back to themselves, and as a result, like in connection with others. And so I was even thinking about the space that you create. And I know we'll get into that a little bit more, but just in terms of like support, it's like what you're doing, Alexandra, and then also being able to hold the space for that. I can't imagine someone entering into that space and not being held and nourished and just like seen for who they are in the most intimate ways. So I just wanted to say that, because I know that humhum, in addition to everything that you offer, is also a space, which is really incredible. So yeah, the dissonance, whew, oh my God, my body, wow, oh boy. So my body, and this is what's so interesting about, so just for a moment, like how this like blueprinting has like so deeply etched itself into like my being, is that I'm, I was bred to I was bred to hold this blueprinting of like my ancestors and of these like ways of being, these authoritative ways of being. And so it's like it's etched into my body. And so now, like, I'm like, okay, I need to extract myself from that. And what happened is this really big imbalance in my body. And so the way that that started to manifest is, just through injury and like just like a chronic pain and this like really gnarly imbalance that's happening in my body, and it's all between the left and the right sides of my body. So it's really fascinating because the left side is holding so much dissonance, and at the same time, like I feel like my right is like trying to pick up the slack, and like it's interesting. It feels like the right is trying to like correct it and like put me back into my old ways, where I'm like, no. And so then what I'm experiencing is a lot of contraction. And I am really uncomfortable in my physical body, because I'm undoing what has been done at such a deep level. And this starting before I was even physically here, or probably even physically before I was even a thought in my parents' heads. It's like this blueprinting is so deep that it just like becomes you, and so then you're like sort of unbecoming that. But some of the ways that I'm working toward a coherence is, so there's a couple things actually. I decided to explore it's called the Resilience Advantage Program through HeartMath Institute. So I created a body of work called Pathways of Heart. And essentially, Pathways of the Heart is a boundless journey to harmonize our etheric and human heart. And that in itself is creating an embodied coherence between who we are as consciousness and who we are as organisms. But I still was experiencing heart disconnect because of the foundation that I'm trying, this new foundation that I'm trying, or nature a foundation that I'm trying to restore inside of me. So I decided to explore this program and see how it could help create a little bit more heart alignment. And also, I decided to proceed with the somatic experiencing program, Peter Levine's program around nervous system regulation. So as being just a sensitive person, my nervous system is just, it like at the flip of a switch, my nervous system can like be completely disorientated and dysregulated. And so like how am I starting to embody and deepen into this nature blueprint, this living systems blueprint, so that I can hold all of the energy that is moving through me and from me. So that's really what I'm sort of focusing on right now, is creating this new rooting system. And those are just some of the tools that I'm exploring in doing that. I know there's so many, but that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Wow. It's so wild that you brought up this notion of a new rooting system, because literally last night I'm moving through my own stuff with grief and reconstruction, and that exact phrase came through of like, oh, like I'm rerouting, like, and my roots are all entangled and confused. And I'm like, so just to hear you say that is it's just blowing my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had talked about us kind of coming in with the blueprint, like before we're even a notion in our, parents' minds in some sense. Like, I know now we're probably getting into kind of like pretty macro esoteric concepts, but I'm curious if you feel moved to talk at all about like how to hold that, and then
what this recovery process is kind of, because it's almost like you're describing like a restoration process. And I'm totally going off script, by the way. These are like, my questions are not at all what I told you I was going to be asking.
I love
it. I'm just flowing with what you're saying. But it's got me really curious about, like, can you paint that picture? Like, okay, we have these blueprints, we're coming in, you're working in your records, as I understand, to kind of help restore a root system that is in integrity with your inherent wisdom and inherent essence. Am I like seeing that accurately?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And so this is like, right, like, are you just saying about how to actually do that restoration? I know you're, these different resources, like as you're working in the records and helping your system to access its intrinsic blueprint.
Yeah.
Like, what are you discovering?
Yeah.
Asking for a friend over here.
So what I'm trying to restore my rooting system to and with is a living system blueprint, a living system ontology. What that means to me is that there is nothing or no one that I am not in relationship with. I am in relationship with everything. So, okay. So, like a really tangible example of that. And I swear, there's major shout outs to my teacher, Leah Garza, because like she has been a guiding force for me to explore, these like really big concepts. And at the same time, she created the container for us to like as we start to dissolve, like our being dissolve. Oh, she's watching. Like as you start to dissolve, you're being held in that, which is I value so much. So like a really, really tangible example of that, my partner and I went to see Ray LaMontagne this past Sunday at Wolf Trap in Virginia. I just want to say it because Ray LaMontagne is amazing. Like, he makes love with his instruments, and that love is like his poetry and his like creative expression. And Wolf Trap is just such an extraordinary venue to experience a concert at. But prior to us going in, my partner was like, he got me a sandwich and I ate half, and he's like, do you want to eat the other half before we go in? And I was like, let me check with my gut biome. Let me see if they need more energy and like more nutrients. And so I like checked in with my gut biome, and I was like, no, they're good. They can wait until the end of the concert. And so what happens is like you start, my experience is I start to step away from the I and more into the we. And I'm not trying to speak for another person. I am trying to speak from this place of everything that comprises me as a human being. Yeah. And so that for me, that's so many things. That is the trillions of cells in my body. That is, the gut biome. It is like whatever my bones are needing, like so that I can like move through the experience that I'm having. And so if I'm coming from this place of like being in this body and everything that comprises my body, I also am connected to the we that I'm experiencing with the living system that is a part of me. And so it's like really checking in with, I talked about this earlier, is like
is like the whole me. And again, not to speak for another person, because that's not what I'm trying to do, but it's more at like a micro level, being able to speak from that place. And that place is very neutral. It's very sustainable. Like, so instead of, because I'm a consumer, definitely, I actually was raised. Here's where it's interesting, because I can start to see the blueprinting. I was raised to finish everything on my plate, even if I was satisfied and full. And so I have this programming to consume everything on my plate, because that is how I was blueprinted. But if I'm coming from this living systems ontological lens, it's like, what do I need that is truly nourishing and sustainable for me without like over consuming? So, so it's a beautiful place to be. It slows you down, it softens you, and then everything starts to just become slower. Like, you don't need to rush.
You're making me think a lot about this natural rhythm of giver-receiver energy with everything that is. And in order to like actually tune in to that abundance frequency, I've been really sensing into like satisfaction as a concept, or as a like an experience, not as a concept. And when you're talking about asking your microbiome, like, hey, how are we doing? What do we need? And they're like, I'm good, I'm satisfied. There is an intelligence in that helps you to not take more than is yours to have in this moment. And so there's like a natural rebalancing that I'm sensing as you're talking, that's happening when you do that kind of slowing down, checking in. And green lights, everybody's good. Like, it isn't everybody, like I say that kind of in jest, but like as a kid, I used to say, or like growing up, I used to say like, oh, I used to refer to myself as we. And because there was some sort of like layered awareness of this human experience that is more than I. And now hearing you talk about it as like a rediscovery of the intelligence of the living systems that we're a part of, there's already like a balance if we can tune into the satisfaction and tune into the kind of intrinsic harmony that is being accessed. So I just get really lit up as you share about that.
Well, and that's even so in terms of what Hum is doing. I think the work of your organization, of you, it's so crucial, because you are really helping others come back to that essential nature of who they are, to slow down in connection, and really be in tune with how they are sensing some kind of like aligned congruency with that connection or not, or kind of just like in the discovery phase of it. And so I think about what you're doing, and it's like, you, Alexandra, personally, collectively, you're rewiring, you're creating you are like restoring a rooting system and a way of being in connection with the work that you're doing, which is so amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. And I feel like on a similar level, how when you talk about how in creating a body of work, it works on you and the consciousness kind of shifts and adjusts, that has very much been my experience with Hum. Like, I could not have predicted any of the personal shifts and adjustments that have happened in my life, like since doing this work. And I'm like, where are we going next? Like, what's happening? Because and
starting to kind of sense into this broader relational web that you're describing. And that feels like, I don't know that I had language for it 4 years ago, and it's kind of making its way. My teacher, Mickey, and I keep referring to her because her work is truly like, she has the most pristine conceptual clarity that I've ever seen, and can just talk to things about the human experience that I'm like, oh my God. And she actually refers to herself as a we also, and like has these pods of humans. I mean, it's a whole other thing, but I'm just blown away by being in her program. And she talks about moving from instrumental relationships into like intrinsic willingness. Like you're in the relationship out of an intrinsic desire rather than an instrumental one. And I think with dating, one of the reasons it feels transactional is because it is transactional. We want something from someone else because we're projecting on some idea about a future that we want to step into, and we're like, who's going to help me do that? Like it is instrumental, and relationships are not meant to be instrumental. Like, and as you're describing, it's like this web, and I'm still finding my way and my language with it. I know it's not quite there yet, but I'm willing to kind of be in the messiness of the discovery and not exactly know how to put words to the sensing. But it's around moving from instrumental relating in a dating and romantic world into just holding this web of humanity and the various like in flavors of intelligence, not quite the right language, but like that wants to move and pulse and be in relationship and like rearrange in some way.
What it makes me think about, so as a part of Pathways of the Heart, I came upon this concept, which is a play on words from living system, but I came upon this concept of a loving system, and it's the relational pillars that help you experience love. And so a loving system just like holds the characteristics of relationships, like any dimension of relationship that allow you to experience love. And so because of a loving system, you enter into a relational ontology. So relational ontology, again, is just, so what that means to me is that the lens that is shaping my reality is recognizing that everything I'm in relationship with is helping shape my reality. So what, like what I think about and what comes to me, this is so fascinating with dating, is that when I enter into a new experience, a new connection, it isn't about like, what can this person share or express that's going to complement what vision I have for the future, but more entering into that connection as a discovery about myself and what is not embodied that I want to be a part of my future. So I started to see my dating path as it started to become a personal practice path where I was like, and look, I'm human too. So of course, like, I've attached my dreams or, my hopes onto like some of those experiences and those connections. However, I, at the same time, was still being able to hold the relationship, bringing something into my life experience that may not have been fully expressed or fully embodied, and then allowing whatever that pathway was or is to unfold and then become a part of me, which then had no attachment to a person, you know, more than just that person really being a catalyst for that discovery and the embodiment of that discovery. So the dating path, whew, man, you wanna it's like you wanna like supercharge, oh my God, just like being fully expressed. Like the dating path is like just like such a I just think about generative, and I know you talk a lot about that, like that being a really generative path for just like you fully embodying like your expression, your creative expression, or your most intimate expressions.
Oh, I love how you like how you're able to put words to that, because a lot of the time I'll hear folks in our community say things like, oh, I continue to attract the same people into my field, or like I'm continuing to like bump into some of the same stuff. And the way that you're talking about it, it's like if those different people are placed in our orbit as a mirror to help us step into an embodiment of some other facet of our being, like it makes sense that it's going to continually show up until we've like taken it on in some way. And I've definitely experienced that in my own path, where I'm like, this seems to be like a recurrent theme. What's the lesson here? And I know you talk about like, what's the choice point? And like choice points as a lens to look into a threshold where we can either expand or contract. And if you can share a little bit more about that as like just a tool or a framework for that, I guess in your own journey, and also maybe that you've seen with the work you've done with clients, but like how that framing is helpful to then step into that embodiment and like have the path be the spiritual path.
I see, this is really interesting. I sort of see the infinity loop as you know, just as a shape that is a shape that can hold the contraction and expansion we experience. And I kind of see the center of the infinity loop as like a choice point. And so I'm just using that visual as a depiction. And I think what's really important is that while contraction and expansion very much feel like a binary, there is like in that binary, there is this contrast of experience that I would say primarily is the dominating energy that is always with us, which is like, you know, I may be experiencing contraction in my physical body, but at the same time, I also know that the partnership I'm in is starting to expand, and the lives that we're creating is starting to expand. And so a lot of what this comes back to for me is being able to hold that and then simultaneously bring myself into the present and to really to focus on I've been working in my records around this recently, and is to focus on really what is essential for me to focus on. And so a lot of that has been me letting go of things that I am not consciously aware of. However, what I am aware of is that there's some dissonance, like some energetic congestion that I need to let go of. So I'm consciously aware of, I am going to let go of that. And I am going to stay open to the future possibilities, but also bring my attention and awareness into the present moment and allow my energy to be guided and directed to what is essential. Because I feel like what I value and what I'm holding, I have a deep awareness around, but then all of the energy that accompanies that, like there's no way I could have my awareness on all of that. So a lot of it is like really just like holding and being with myself, like present, like so present, so much that I need to trust that everything else that is energetically congested or is also like being tended to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really profound. And I'm like, it's almost as if in focusing on what's essential and staying rooted in the present, instead of going into the confusion or into the chaos or into the congestion to try to sort it, you hone in on what's true, what's essential here now. And then it almost helps to, the other stuff will sort itself. Like you don't have to be in the doing of the sorting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're pretty much at our time. We could probably talk for another like 2 hours at least. I guess I do have one last question. Do you have time?
Yeah.
Okay. It's because this one is around language, and I know that I've heard you refer to your partnership as a continuum, or even your partner as your continuum. And I'm imagining that this connects back to this kind of we consciousness or the shift around living systems. But I'm so curious to have you talk more about the essence of that language.
It's so funny because yeah, we call each other like life partner continuum or like LPC for short. And I think like so much, and again, this is like where like the decolonial inspiration came from for me, which the work really moves us into Nepantla, which is also that liminal space, right? It's like the in between, the cracks, the crevices. So it moved me into these cracks. And then in those cracks, what started to become so clear, not only around the personal pathway work that I developed, which is all about personalizing your pathway of connecting with the Akasha and beyond, the ether and beyond, but also just like the way that I wanted to exist in life was like a new language system, like sourcing language, like what is a new language system? And like what started to feel so clear was that there's not even words to describe the things that I feel inside of me. Like our vocabulary is limited. Our vocabulary is rooted in a supremacy hierarchical paradigm. So when I would go to a word, I'd be like, what does the word mean? And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I'm trying to evoke. Like that is not the appropriate like vocabulary word. And so I laugh at myself because like I just feel like I'm creating a new languaging system for myself, and like and it's just kind of funny. But so where continuum came from is that my partner and I were talking about the connection that that we both experience with each other. And one of the things that we recognized was us being in connection and communication before we physically ever met. I was like, oh, I've been having conversations with you for a very long time. And now here you are in the flesh, which is so weird because you know me so well, even though you don't know me. But like, so we experience this mutually. It is a very mutual relational ontology for us. And then we started to have this awareness of like, well, I don't know where I end and you begin. Like it just we started to experience each other as a continuum, like almost like needing a moment to say like, oh yeah, that I'm in my body. Like I'm in my body. Here's where my body ends. There's where yours begins, I think, you know? And so then it was just like, level, like there is no border to. I was like, we got to explore language around like our partnership. And he was like, well, what about continuum? I'm like, oh my God, that's so perfect. So, but then also just like life partnership, because we both are, there is a knowing that we both know, we both experience that we were meant to come together and build our lives together. And so I said to him, like very jokingly the other day, he was just like, actually yesterday, he was like, what was your favorite Ray LaMontagne song? And I was like, I was born to love you. And I was just sharing with him that, you know, I came into this existence knowing that I was born to love this partner. And yet what's so exciting is that we're like physically creating what our lives are going to look like together. But I think the most important thing, you know, and then also in addition to, it's like, you know, as we bring a family in, like how our family starts to experience their lives and their reality. And it's just, it's all just so fascinating. So anyhow, really just coming back to us and just like sourcing language, I do not feel the language that I want to express is available to me in that authoritative blueprint that I inherited. And so I'm finding myself emerging through these cracks and crevices and trying to source vocabulary and language that is appropriately embodying the way that I am experiencing my being. And so what that really looks like is like getting out under the vocabulary system that can sometimes confine, constrict, and even be wounding. So that's kind of where we're at. And then it's also like taking into consideration, you know, when we bring a family in, like, oh my God, the question that I sat with after Pathways of the Heart, after like all my what would you call it? I guess it's just like practice sessions. Like it's like really kind of just like testing the workout, was like the thesis is, how can we be fully expressed and embodied whole beings? Like that is where the work is. And also the excitement, because there's just so much that comes with it, you know? And then you're like, oh my God, and then what are the words? Like finding the word. I guess first is like feeling it, experiencing it, and then trying to find the vocabulary that matches it.
Like the subtlety. And I think kind of going back full circle to where you started, which is like being hyper present to one's experience, to be able to sense in and have the subtlety of the experience so that then new language can emerge and we can even talk about it. But first, it's like orienting within our own system in terms of what is this that I'm knowing, sensing, feeling, experiencing.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's so much more to say, but I feel like we covered a lot of ground. This has been such a rich conversation. There's so much in here, and if we both feel aliveness around doing a part two, we can talk about that.
Yes,
So,
that sounds wonderful.
is there anything else you want to name before we close in terms of, well, I would love to point people to your work if they're curious about learning more about the blueprint, and also Pathways of the Heart work. How can they find you, and what is it that you are sharing now? Yeah.
Oh goodness. So yeah, if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more about the work that I'm sharing, my website is helenvonderheide.com, or you can click in my Instagram
I'll link your bio.
profile. But I'm presently sharing the personal pathway work, which is developing and creating your unique pathway to access and connect with your etheric expression, the Akashic expression. I'm going to be sharing Pathways of the Heart in mid-year 2024. So keep your eyes out for that. That's like a really incredible program that I am so stoked to share. But more than anything, and just kind of coming back to what brought us together was, new narratives on dating, relating, partnering, new relational narratives. I think more than anything, it's a really innovative time for us as human beings, as well as a really vulnerable time for us to extract ourselves from imposed narratives in.
Say that last part again, it cut out.
Sorry, my battery is the battery is like getting low, so I think it paused me.
You broke the internet.
No. I would say, like, more than anything, it's like really extracting oneself from any imposed relational narratives, and just starting to center into that essential nature of a true narrative. Like, what is truly a reflection of your narrative around relating, dating, partnering. And I mean, even like, I hear so many people say around like dating is like, oh, I hate dating. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the juiciest part of like getting to know yourself. Like how can we shift that narrative around dating, and just like connecting and meeting and so it's like, so really what that means to me is like extracting any narratives that are imposed around the way that we're seeing or experiencing the reality of something.
Oh, yes. So if you want to dive deep into your own heart's pathway, highly recommend Helen. 10 out of 10. I did the Pathways course and it was a massive opening for me. So more on that. I'll link everything in our bio, and just thank you so much for sharing your heart with us, your wisdom, your journey, and the work that you're doing is so needed. And I feel, we're on kind of a kindred path here with what we're creating. So so appreciate you. All right. Well, until next time, thanks everyone for tuning in. So much love.
Thank you.
Right. Bye, Helen.
Bye.